years, and then the kind of activity, how the activity influence on the second generations attitude about missions. It was pretty interesting, but yeah, there was no study about second generation millennial Korean Americans, especially in missions. Yeah, so I tried, and finally I finished it. It's been almost more than a year been with you guys, and I don't know, maybe you took my class previously, but I hope that I always hope that you guys see you in class. So we can communicate more, and we can share about our topics. We can share about the issue of life issues, and then we can get some wisdom in class. So that's my hope. But still, something is going on. I don't know. A lot of schools are open, but still they are struggling with a lot of stuff. And then it's on the top of the COVID, because nowadays you see what happened in Texas, right? So that's one of the social issues. And I've been married about 26 years, and I have 2 daughters, and then they already graduated from colleges, and then they are, a couple of weeks ago, one of my older daughter had a graduation for master's. So I've been there in Boston, so it was pretty different from here. I know once in a while I visit my daughters and my friends, but still it's just strange, compared to it in LA. But still, it's a lot of difference, and people are different, and weather is different, but still I try to enjoy it, but LA is much better than Boston. Okay, before we go into the class, if I have you guys in class, and I want to know who you are, but maybe if you are taking my class, you can introduce yourself, send by texting or email if you want. So at least I want to know who are taking my classes, and then if you want to talk about the topics about class and other things, and we can talk. And I don't know how many you guys are interested in education. I'm really interested in education. So especially I got involved. I have engaged in missions in a lot of different ways, but still my emphasis is kind of on education. So what I want to do is to raise the local leaders to serve their community and their local churches. So 2 years ago, I kind of created a nonprofit organization to support the people who are struggling with the finance for their education. So we're willing to support for their tuitions and living, and in order that they may finish their education, so that later on after their education, and then they can serve the community. That's what one of my kind of work right now I'm doing. So it's not a big, but still try to connect with try to find the people who are really struggling with the finance for their education, but it's not easy. I don't want to just give some money for their education, but I want to communicate with them, how they are doing, how they do their schools, and what happened in their daily life. So usually it's not easy because they have different languages, and they live in different cultures, but still yeah, basically I try to we as a parent couple them and then still communicate in English, and I use the kind of social media. So I know some Spanish, but sometimes if I don't understand, then yeah, I'm still learning Spanish with app. Yeah, I don't know whether you guys know the Duolingo. So it's been for a while, and then still struggled a lot. Yeah, but still learning other languages. So I use my Beijing language to communicate with the local people, student. That was kind of works, and then I try to find someone who can speak and who can lead them in faith and willing to participate in our ministry. So I don't know if you are interested, and just let me know. And another thing that I learned a lot about education, especially for cross-cultural education. Just think about, I grew up in Korea and you guys grew up in maybe different part of the world. And some of them, you guys are close to Korea, maybe Japan and Chinese. And we have kind of similar educational method and kind of influence one another, and then but if you come to the America, and this is really different, right? About 25 years ago, I studied college here again, and I studied psychology, and then one of the topics was really interesting though, and my professor kind of introduced the kind of writing styles, and was white people and Asian people and other ethnic people, how they write. So I struggled a lot because I never kind of learned how to write, right? I don't know you guys, but and when I come here and then see the kind of writing style, and then always if you are taking class college, and there's a topic sentence and kind of you got expand and example and conclusion like this. That is a basic structure that people are usually looking for, and then that's why when you read the book, and you don't have to read everything, just know the kind of the introduction paragraph, and then see what they see all the way bottom, to skim through. It's easy to read, and but if you like me from Korea, it's kind of writing kind of just think about jumbling around and heave, and just really start with being circumspect, and then surrounding it little by little, all the way down the end, and I can write down why I'm writing like that. So a little bit different writing style. That was kind of interesting, and but that's why I learned that we are so different, right? If you grow up, even though kind of influenced by the Western education, but still we are different, right? Because of the purpose of education, because of the philosophy of education is different. In each countries. And I've been engaging with missions about more than more than 10 years, but more than 10 years physically I got involved in continually kind of with in same places, and not going to here and there. So usually in the beginning I went to Thailand and Ghana and other part of the world. But after that, I kind of strategically I want to focus on specific areas. So to mobilize people to missions, to mobilize the family to missions. So it's easy to go to Mexico. So I went to Tijuana and I went to the Guadalajara, the second largest city in Mexico. I can drive down to Tijuana, but I cannot go to Guadalajara by driving. So we went there by airplane. So plane. Almost more than 10 years, I still have a connection with the people, and then even though we don't do any more kind of mission activities, but still I have a connection, and once a year I visit them and then try to encourage them, and I want to see how they are doing. And I grew up at church from the childhood, so just think about I don't know how many people you guys are kind of used to the church cultures, but from the Sunday schools and junior high schools and colleges, and I went to seminary school and then like this, and whole my life it's related to church. So, but when I went to Mexico and the missionary asked me to train the teachers, but at that time I didn't know who they are. They are come to church and they serve the church, right? That's my that's my assumption, and that's my understanding. This understanding of them, and so I tried to get the material that the Korean church used. Just think about, and they talk about the theology, they talk about the educational theories, and pretty higher education for Sunday school teachers and middle school teachers. And they provide education to serve in a proper way. But when you go to other countries, especially like for inner city area, their education level is so low, and then sometimes they don't understand what you say because their background is different. Finally, what I found out was they never been at Sunday school, and maybe someday in their family, kind of they accepted Jesus Christ and they started coming to church. That's why sometimes because of friend, they came to church and served, and they never seen the where's the Sunday school education and where's the youth school education, right? No, education for youth. But just think about it, their education kind of level is low, and then they never had any experience, and then I never thought about how they could understand the material that I present. But why I'm teaching them in 1 year, 3 years, and then I finally found out like this, and then from that time, always I think about social economic levels, and then status, and then I think about the education background. I think about their religious background, right? And try to adjust to their level, and that is a kind of contextualization. And there was kind of a struggle a lot for a year, and finally, I found out that, and sometimes I cannot give a lot of information, like a college, and then some of you guys, listen a lot of things and over and over and over, maybe high school and college and from other places, right? And then kind of, naturally you can think about and understand, and then sometimes you use just logic and then understandable, right? What you heard is understandable. But if you go to other part of the world, and then they never heard, right? Their education level is not that high. So one of my adjustment was teach slowly and instead of giving a lot of material and teach one by one and make sure whether they understand. And like this, and then once I try to teach them how to meditate on the Word of God, and then usually if you grow up here and once and twice and you completely understand what is going on. But I was doing a workshop with the teachers, but they cannot. So they couldn't, and they couldn't understand the whole story. And when I questioned it, they cannot answer it, right? And I let them read about 5 times, and finally they had a whole picture of the story like that. So sometimes surrounding environment and your cultural background, educational background, and we got a lot of things to consider for education. So I hope that the principle of teaching and learning help you to when you teach others, and kind of this is really broad, and then maybe why I preparing for lectures, and then what is your emphasis, what is your focus? It's a primary education or secondary education and higher education, right? And then it's for the young people, or it's a vocational, or the older people. Depends on the education level. Depends on who they are, and depends on the job and their interest in. Education is totally different. Needed different mean that it needs to take a different approach. So sometimes usually I take this one, and then maybe we can apply to in primary, secondary, and college, but it's not for the kind of training for jobs. That's a part of education, right? Part of education, and then provide skills and knowledge, and then it's not a different style, but androgynous kind of a different education, the people, right? The student is different. So try to even though I get the material here and there, but try to get general information which apply to primary, secondary, and higher education. So here is the course description. Let me read for you. The class explores general elements of education, such as philosophy of education, and theories and curriculums and class management and assessment and distance learning and social influence in education. So nowadays, after COVID, and then we developed distance learning. People, there is, but it's not an activity. It's not the influential, but nowadays, and a lot of programs are kind of created and developed for distance learning. But there is a history, but but if I have time, and we can talk about the cross-cultural teaching, if you are interested in teaching in other countries. And there's we're gonna kind of see the all kind of component of education. It's not just a class education. It's not just a classroom teaching. So give them knowledge, and that's kind of really basic stuff, right? And so some topics are kind of discussed from the traditional perspective, even though they are not same as the past education in terms of approach, like distance learning. And if you got a degree from the distance learning, yeah, it was not, we acknowledge that, but it's not much for credential, right? If you go to institutional school institution and go get a degree, and then if you go to online kind of class, and a little bit different credential, yeah. But nowadays it's kind of different. The society is changing, so some of them is not the kind of traditional way. But let's see how much you can dig in, and then we can get it from the classroom. But the quality of education based on the non-traditional setting resulted from the pandemic phenomena we will discuss in this class, and then class also navigates the controversial issues generated by social factor affecting education. So that is the basic things that we're gonna do. So what is education? So what kind of component we gotta think about it when you are talking about education? It's not just to come to class and teach and learn, right? So maybe we're not gonna really focus on specific topic. One topic may be learning theory. That's a whole semester topic, class. But we're not gonna do that one. Just what kind of education theory is out there, and how it's applicable like this. Simple one, but you gotta understand how people, what they have in their mind, and what kind of theory they are using, and how they are kind of doing in education, right? That's a basic course description. So what I want you guys to learn and kind of get the takeaways. So students understand the education by essential element of education. So I want you to understand the holistic of education, not just a classroom education, right? Just inside classroom and outside the classroom, even though they are primary, elementary, and junior high, and high school and college, but still, how can we impact on the students? So if we wanna do it, and then you're gonna see the all kind of component of education, but we don't know how much we can do it, but maybe kind of open the door for you guys, and then you can see maybe if you are more interested, and then you can study education, and then you can go through a lot of different things what's going on, and then at least you gotta think about when you have opportunity to teach, right? And there's a student will demonstrate how they apply the learning to a teaching project, even by their interest. Just think about it. If you are really interested in teaching something, maybe computer class, and maybe English class, maybe any other class, if you are interested, and then try to follow each subject, and then you're gonna see, you're gonna kind of make one project, and each week you can think about and develop your idea, and then make a kind of a manual, right? And then you can take this manual into the field, education field, and then you gotta practice that one, and then you can assess and evaluation, and then you can kind of adjust to your manual like that. So just think about what you are interested in, any topics, and any kind of age levels, the genders, and what do you want to teach? Maybe math, maybe other topic, it doesn't matter. Okay, so just keep that in mind, one thing, and then be with me. And at the end of class, I'm gonna let you know what you need to do during the week, and then you could see, okay? And another object is that student can be equipped with the knowledge to evaluate the quality of education. So maybe you have a different standard of education. I have pretty higher standard of your education. So I mean that, I don't mean that, oh, you gotta go to top school, college, and graduate and get a good job. No, I don't mind. Actually, how can help them to be mature with the knowledge and live a life with their knowledge, right? I'm really interested, not just delivering the skills and knowledge. I'm really interested in transforming their life. Think about sometimes in math, and you don't have to take a lot of high level of math, and algebra is okay, but just think about it, and it doesn't help directly, but it helps you how to think logically and help you kind of how to solve a problem like this. It's just sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. That's the one way that you could kind of develop your skills through education, and then, but it's not just for you yourself, but how can develop our values, right? That one is all just skills, knowledge, and kind of transformation and with the values, and then that is the quality of education. So depends on people. Said some people really interested. I raise up kids, and then they I invest in education a lot. So if they say, oh, I want to learn taekwondo, so why? So because I want, okay, and then I need to take them to the taekwondo place, and then register for the class. And what my older daughter said, she was like 8, and oh, I wanna become a professional tennis player. So okay, I don't know what she really wants to do. I want to help her to find her way and find what she really wants to do for herself and for the society. And then okay, so I bought 2 rackets, and then try to find found a coach, and let her take her lessons. And I don't spare I invest a lot for their education as long as they're really interested and they want to learn something. So usually I don't push them to force them to do something. Usually they say, okay, I don't want to do it, and then let them go. And then like a taekwondo, and then they almost committed about 6 years, and then they a second degree in black belt, and then they one day said, my younger one said, and it's too physical, so I don't like it, so I want to stop. Okay, are you sure? Okay. So personally, I wanted to keep the taekwondo instead of playing the tennis, and then playing tennis, and then but they told my younger one chose playing playing tennis, and then okay, so just think about if you have more developed your skills and and taekwondo, and you can, it's really great for the self-defense, especially for woman, right? That's parent taught. Anyway, so maybe some of them is really okay. Education, studies your own things, and you gotta do your own. And not many people sometimes they don't support a lot for their education, but they support others. Different perspective and different priority. But that's what I want. So through the whole understand the kind of what is the component of education, and then see maybe institutional education and your church education and any company education, any kind of education, you can see how they do it. And that is the purpose of the class. So required reading, and I try to give with some books. It is kind of the principle of teaching and learning. There is a basic idea about what you need for education, and learning works, how the learning is works, and there's another book is that there's a timeless. That's the article, Timeless Principle for Effective Teaching and Learning of Modern Application Historical Principles and Guidance. Yeah, that is kind of a journal, so maybe you can read it. I think I attached it, right? And that is kind of if you I hope you gotta read. You gotta read and you can get some for the class. There is a lot of I try to research and the kind of I found several resources for education. It's not just to think about education is kind of complicated, and it's not just number one, number two, number three. Maybe one of them is kind of idea about what is the principle of teaching and learning, but I don't like it a lot of stuff. That one is kind of if you don't know about basics and just you can say something and it's not much effective. So at least if you know the basic basis, basic the component and educations, and then if you hear about it and you can where I can adjust this one, and you can evaluate yourself and you can see, and then you can adopt what you can critically adopt it, right? And other than that, sometimes a lot of people just take it and they don't know what the environment and kind of situation, their level, just take the others and then try to force them to take it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's why. So it's a lot of helpful materials, and if you that's why I put some the website, right? And then you can go and click it, and then you can see what material that I kind of referred and kind of adapted the materials. Here is class topics, and first one is what's the first week. That's introduction for today, like today, and then introduce basic idea about education, and I try to give you, but I share my experience, and then today we're gonna talk about the education philosophy, the philosophy of education, and then next week, learning theory, what kind of learning, what kind of philosophies people are using, what is the theories based on the learning, and then there is next week. So learning theory. Now this is a lot of psychologists and educational educator kind of developed their theories, but beyond that, there is a basic philosophies there. Influence on education, right? And then we're gonna talk about the curriculum, and just think about it. What's your philosophy, and what kind of method that is effective for the philosophy? How can you design the whole education, like the curriculum? So, and what's the object and activities, and how many hours you're gonna teach, like this. And what's the principle of how can we evaluate? How can we test whether they are doing understand the material or not? What about the student assessment and teacher evaluation? How can we assess the student, how they are doing, and test and holistic assessment? What about teachers? They are doing a good job, and how to help the student? So how can manage a classroom? Now it is a primary and secondary and even higher education. How can you create effective kind of teachings and learning? Like online class, I cannot do much things, and then sometimes if I talk for like 1.5 hours and 2 hours, and I'm really exhausted, right? So one way kind of a teaching, but just think about it. What is the effective way for the education, and how can we manage the classroom? What about how can you use the technologies? Nowadays, technology is really popular, right? My kids is that my younger one is born in 1998, and then around from 2000. Some school doesn't have the textbook. They don't carry the textbook. They use the what? Tablet. Different generation, right? And my two daughters, and then they're kind of between Gen Z and the millennial. They can belong to the Gen Z and early millennial, late millennial, early Gen Z. But that is how can we use the technologies? When I was in high school, we had kind of a video system, but it was not that effective at all. It was really I think no school in my city, no school had the kind of system, but we didn't use it a lot. Only for once a week we had a kind of ceremony, and once a week we had a kind of I went to Christian school worship, and pastor came, and we like this now, this online worship, right? And then we don't use so much, but we had a kind of a system. Even though we have technology and we don't use it to nothing, right? How can we use the technology to make our education effective? And what about the cross-cultural teachings? And what about distance teachings? And if we go totally different environment and context, cultural context, and if you can see the people like now, and nobody's here, but we are really maybe distance learning, usually taking class online and talk online, discuss each other, but maybe they had a residency, kind of maybe 2-3 weeks, and then come together and then they learn and discuss and like this. But some of classes never done that, right? And what about the social influence of politics in education? So how society and government and influence on education? We can see nowadays, especially like primary education, like kindergarten. So how can you educate? Sometimes I really kind of don't. I don't really agree with them. But just think about, they don't have judgment, right? Judgment, sound judgment like 5 years, 6 or 7 years old, and kind of let them choose their own genders, and then I don't know whether it's effective, and then learning about all stuff, and then it's too early. Because they don't have sound, I believe that they don't have sound judgment, like 20 years old, like high school, even high school, sometimes they have too much, energies and passions, and then cannot make some judgment. But think about how influence on our education. I don't know how much you can see. Maybe some of them if I missed, and then I try to add, and then I think if I say little bring it out in other topics, I'm gonna skip the part, and then let's see how much you can do. There's a basic class topics, and depends on the situation. Maybe you can switch it, and maybe you can maybe try to. At least, I try to think about once all topics, but I don't know how much you can do it. What is education? What do you think? What is education? Have you thought about what is education? Here is a kind of terminology, etymology, and then the word education derives from Latin word, educatio, or breeding, or bringing up, or rearing, right? It means that think about kind of you invest something, and just think about you bought the one small plant, and I used to buy the small plant and try to raise the bigger and bigger. Once I bought $30 kind of a small plant at Trade Joe. I don't know what it was like, and then it's very cute and small, ceramic pot, and $30 a yard. So it's a pretty good for decoration, and then I bought it. And then almost more than a year and 2 years, and then they grew it little by little by little by. Do you know how the plant came out? It's not a cute and exotic plant that I expected, but there was a rubber tree that I had in my backyard. Interesting. So, like this, and then originally like a breeding or bringing up and rearing, that's education. So, and educo means educate, I train. It's kind of a little bit nuances, a little bit different, but still same meaning as it. So. So look at this, and then just to think about the basic idea of education is from the when you mean that, and even though we don't use the word, but still the basically etymology, and then there is from there is a bit a little bit kind of expanded, like I learned for take out, I raise up, and I erect from the rock. So usually if you know the words prefix and suffix in Latin, so and mean the from and out of, and do mean I lead and conduct. So mean that is from that one. So basically you gotta raise up from what? Out of something, right? And that's a basic term that the education is kind of terminology, and then maybe help you guys to understand. So what is education is like? How do you define education though? How do you define? So I don't know whether you guys heard of it. I don't know in Chinese, but in Korean like this, the 교육 is 100년대지계. 교육 100년대지계. It means that kind of education is really important. So education should be planned for for the long term, like 100 years. It's not just 1 day and 2 day work and 1 year work. Think about your formal education. If you're up to kindergarten and preschool to what? How? And college, how many years? Almost elementary 6 years, right? And kindergarten. Nowadays they go to preschool too, and they go to private institution to learn something, right? And kindergarten and 6th grade, and then 2-year junior high school, 3-year junior high school, 4-year and high school in over 12 years and 16 years, right? If you go to graduate school, maybe 2 to 6 years. If you go to PhD program, and another 6 years. If you go to professional school, maybe another 4 years, 3 years. Almost what? How many years? My daughter she's in a professional school, and then she never take any break, and from the kindergarten, and she is 24 now, and going to be 25, right? 24, and then she is kind of just think about it. She finished 2 years, and then another years, and then she has 26. And then if she get proper training, and she needed 4 years, and then almost 30 years, right? So think about even though when you have a plan for your kids, and how can you plan? What do you want to teach them? And you got to define what is education. Right? There's a lot of definition. You cannot say, oh, this is the right definition. But based on the origin of the word, and then based on the lot of consensus, and here is a dictionary definitions, and education is the action or process educating or being educated, meaning that it's kind of learning or teaching. And another definition is the knowledge and development from the process of being educated. If you learn and then develop your knowledge and skills, that is education. And that is another one is education in the field of studies, another discipline. Study deal with many the method of teaching and learning in schools like this, but we are not going to focus on the number 2. We are focused on the number 1. Here is another definition is that I got, and education is the process of I don't put the resources, but education is the process of facilitating learning or acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, morals, beliefs, habits, and personal development. You can see that it's not just for school education, right? School education is mostly focused on what? Knowledge. If you maybe values, but if you go to religious education, and then they usually focus on knowledge and values, morals, beliefs. If you go to job place, and they really focus on the information that you need to know, and they really focus on skills that you need to have, right? So the process of the facilitating. So Just think about education is a career. I like the word process, and even though we had a 10, 20 years education, I had a long education background. And after college, I went to seminary school and then graduated seminary school. I immigrated here. I came over United States and I want to do something, and then but it's a lot of requirement, prerequisites there. So instead of taking the prerequisite, I better go to college, undergraduate, to learn English and to learn the stuff. And it took 3 years without any vacation, and I took the class. Even though my English was not good at the time, I barely hear some word, and then I still remember what I went to the junior college, and I was taking psychology, introduction of psychology. Just think about it. You just came from the other countries, and then you never talked to foreigners, and you never talked to any native speakers, and then your education really focus on the reading and grammars, and then reading comprehension and grammars, and you cannot say anything, you cannot hear anything. Whole semester, I just learned, can you dig it? Can you dig it? Every time after the instructor explained something and he said, can you dig it? I don't know what it means exactly. What's a dig in? Literally, sometimes I don't understand what it means, but in the context of what he said, and then do you understand it? Right? Can you dig it? That's my first sentence that I learned from the class. That's why, what I mean is that the process, there is no completed education. Maybe you can complete it in diploma, but if you go and really focus on the values and skills and beliefs and other stuff, and continually, what about technologies develop continually, right? And the guy, I'm gonna officiate his wedding, and then he majored in CIS. At the time, CIS was really popular, and then he's almost 40s, and then do you know how much technology is changing? And then he was thinking about changing his job, and then but it's a lot of changes, and then he gotta learn some different stuff. Because after college, he got a master's, and but still he doesn't need much stuff because it's not related to his job. But if you wanna apply for the Amazon and Facebook and technology is different. So you gotta do this one, and then, I didn't learn it, but I gotta learn it like this. Process. So there is no absolute and finished education. From cradle to what? Grave. To the grave. Here's another definition. R.S. Peter, he proposed some definition. He said it's concerned with transmission of knowledge and understanding. Okay, transmission of knowledge, and transmission is worthwhile. It's really worthy, and then done in morally appropriate manner in tune with the student interest. But nowadays, I don't know how much this part is emphasized, and even for SAT, there is cheating, and if they go to, my daughter said, and she's in professional school, but they still cheating for the test. And high school and junior high school and wherever go, right? It's not just really focus on this one and get the right knowledge and then some credential, and that is really important. You have to to be successful in your life, and then this one is getting kind of decreases, I think. What about another definition? That education is a deliberate, the systemic, and sustained effort to transmit and provoke and acquire knowledge. So mostly primary element, a primary goal of the education is usually really focus on the transmit and acquire knowledge, values, skills, and so as well as any hearing from the airport. So I want you to know that education is not just transmitting the knowledge, understanding, but there is values, attitudes, and skills, right? And just think about how you can define education. And so, what is the purpose of education? And there is a purpose of education, right? Why government educate the citizens, in what way? And what is the basic philosophy? Just think about, and capitalism and communism is different. Each religion is different. So there is a basic philosophy of education, and what is the purpose, right? And there is three things we gotta kind of understand. Right, so there's aim is kind of, we had what's the aim of education? Aims at what? So when we say the aim means that the most general idea, values, and principles which person, institution, or the society regard as the ultimate what? That's the term of the education, right? And that is kind of really general idea about we aims. That's the goals, right? Purpose. So aims when you aims are kind of a really value statement. Designate certain principle or values as the ultimate inspirations. Aim, right? Aim is the kind of shows values, and then aims kind of describe both the ideal target of the education institution as well and its ultimate desired outcome or the achievement. Right? That is usually aims. So educational aims ultimately frame the overall direction of educational system or institutions. Just think about Lordland University. What is it aiming for? Right? What is it aiming at? Aim at to do something, right? That is the basic one. So frame the overall direction of the educational systems. There is just think about, there is a whole package when you think aims. What about goals? Goals are a little bit different, and goals refers to the second stage, which is derivative from aims and focus. So aim is big whole system that you are pursuing, but goal is the another little bit specified and down level, right? And focus on the content and topics that should be studied as to enable students understand actualize core ideas explained in aims. Meaning that use the when you say goal, and how can you carry out our aims, right? That's the goals. General purpose of the education is the aim, and then how can we achieve the basic, this one is really focus on what is our goal to achieve the aim. So goal translate aim into specific content or stepping stone should be part of the educational process, right? That's what I mean. What about the word objectives? Objectives refer both practical stage. Just think about aim, B, education system include values and what? How can you carry out the aim? We can carry out the aims by goals and little bit contents and topics, and we can solve the aim and goals. And what is the object? There is a specific material to carry out the goals. Can you see that how kind of what's the aim is biggest one, and then goal is greater, and the objectives are the one. So just think about every class should supposed to have an object. So small, every time when we teach in the unit object, and then object what carries the what the goals. Goals carries out the aims. So this one is when you think about a whole education, and then just what's the object, what's the aims, what's the goals, what's the objectives. That is related to the basic direction of education. How can you get the direction of education? That's your philosophy. Right? And sometimes, what is your philosophy of education? Like me, and then my basic philosophy of my ministry is what? To raise local leaders, to serve the communities, local community and church communities. And there is and then what about aims? What about what? What about, but like this, and then just think about it, right? And then basic part of making your philosophy. And education is kind of there is types of education. Is a formal education like schools, and provide education is provide institution, right? That's a formal education, like give them diploma but credentials. What about informal education? There is no diploma, but sometimes you could learn your parents teach their kids. And you don't go to school, but it's not formal, but you can take online class, you learn online, provided by your companies. It's not formal, right? It's not structured and given by because based on your need. And what about object is different. Keys and high, kind of adolescents and young adults, and nowadays it's kind of andragogy is like adult, right? After retirement, how can they wrap up their life? And then a lot of different objects, persons, ages. What about method? The method is different, right? You're gonna just teach them, you're gonna just transmit your knowledge and understanding. They need any specific skills, and a lot of different methods. Maybe just lecture them, or just make a kind of a workshop and provide basic principle and do the workshop and how to just let students have their own learning process, whatever. A lot of different ways. How can you help them? What kind of material they need? How long? Right? The curriculums. How? Already I told you how can you run once a week class, every day class, and then period, times, units, different. So it's not simple, but it's a lot of things you have to consider for education. But still, most important thing is the basic goal of education. I mean the basic philosophy of education. And think about learning and education is there's involved in learning and teaching, right? What is learning depends on how to define, and then here is another the definition of learning is learning is a process that leads to change. I like the definition that I learned from the psychology class. Which occurs as a result of experience and increase the potential for improved performance or future learning. Not just delivering the knowledge, but if you learn for the test and then you forgot it, I don't know, can you say that learning? By this definition, maybe you have kind of bring up your potential, but I don't know. So education is kind of involved in like a learning process and teaching process, right? And teaching is a process of attending to people's need, experience, and feelings, and innovation, so that they learn particular things and go beyond the given. That is a teaching. It's not just to deliver the knowledge. That's why, so if I don't have any in-person class, it's not easy though, right? It's not easy delivering experience and feelings and intervening, right? So that is a process too. And once you deliver your knowledge, it's not done yet. Depends on how they learn, and then they are different, and they digest the knowledge and make it their own way. And then that is a kind of process, and teachings come involved in that way, I think. Not just once in class and teaching them and then give them, this is this, and definition is this. Understand? It's not a moving on. That is not my personal definition. No? So basically, education is kind of kind of process by learning, teaching and learning, right? So it's really, really important. So how can we make our education effective in learning and teaching and learning. So, yeah, I already told you about what we need for the educations, and then here is another word, and then what kind of resources and physical surrounding of the schools, the resources, and what about the teachers and principals, and then networks and partnership with other schools and local communities, and curriculums, and teaching and learning. So think about, when you think about school or school community, it's like a formal education. It's a lot of things we need to consider. It's not just a curriculum. It's not just a grade, math and reading and writing, not that kind of science class, English class, math class. It's not all about that one. How can we make education effective? And then what about surroundings? What about school cultures? What about teachers? And what about resources? Or what about principals? How they manage the whole schools? Then another one is kind of for the curriculum and curriculum instruction assessment organization, and then a little bit different one that we need to think about it, but just think about what component elements and needs for the education, and how we can make our education effective. Okay, that is kind of a brief definition of our educations, and involved in teaching and learning. And just a little bit talk about the philosophy of educational philosophy. And educational philosophy is represent the basic theories, and point of view that eventually acquire the label, such as there is current philosophies, and Fourierianism, essentialism, and progressivism, and existentialism. And there is a basic philosophy though, and the philosophies give the basic directions. It's not a detail. So the philosophy of education is the branch of applied philosophy that investigates the nature of education, as well as it aims at what? As its aims and what? The problems. So we already talked about the theories, what kind of theories and they have, and there is a philosophy, and it shows a kind of understand the basic perspective. And from there one, you can develop the theories. And that is all. So I don't know how much you guys understand of philosophy of education, and then even though there is like a perennialism and essentialism and progressivism and existentialism, and even though maybe your thought doesn't fall into the kind of category, but still what kind of idea, even though it's not theorized and it's not developed to any tested theory, but still, what do you have in your mind? When you talk about philosophy of education and how you talk about the direction of education, because why? And there was philosophers who really emphasized educations, and then if you study or read about ancient philosophers in Greece, and then there is one of the kind of teachers and the sophists, the first professional teachers, and they kind of going around and teach them around 450 BC, and they really focus on the rhetoric, how to speak, right? The rhetoric being the art of the oratory, and especially the persuasive use of the language to influence the thought and actions of the listeners, right? That is basically they do. And the root of the modern philosophy kind of existentialism and the situational ethics. Because just think about, and they don't have the other Plato and Socrates and then Aristotle. They don't like the sophists because they don't have any specific system of knowledge, and improvisationally they used their logic, right? Very situational. And usually to think about, and until the time of sophists, the instruction has been mostly tutorial, right? Tutorial, teach them, and they learn. And it's not a creative way. And they introduced the technique of analysis in teaching. Just think about how can you teach persuasive and use of language, and then you gotta know that, right? That's why they introduce technique of analysis in teachings, and they are the kind of model preach for them to copy and analyze and discuss and present in actual spoken practice. Yeah, that's why they really help them how to speak, how to write. That's one of the teachers in Greek history. What about that's a brief history of the education, and then what about the Socrates? Socrates' knowledge is inborn, okay, inborn, and then you have something when you're born, and he believed that questioning can draw it out. If you stay question, and then they found that Socrates dialect. He believed that the main purpose of education was to guide and motivate moral conduct. It's a really emphasis in ethics. And much knowledge was inborn and could be thrown out by skillful questions. So questioning technique is really important. Just think about it. Like me, I will give you kind of a one-way talk and information. I ask you, maybe you can answer a little bit different way, ask you another question, and then just think about, find out, understand in one way, right? He believed that knowledge is inborn. What about the Plato? Plato, he is really the ideal world of ideas, and then learned by thinking. It's emphasized on really your reason and thinking. He believed that education should be concerned itself with helping people comprehend this never change truth. Never change truth, right? He said that there is a form and idea is kind of original things reflect. Never change. The idea of the eternal truth is central to most religions and to the 20th century philosophy, perennialism, right? Idealism. There is a kind of ideal that we pursuing. So, Plato was among the first to formally recognize individual differences. And in his book, The Republic, Plato described how social harmony could be achieved in ideal society by requiring all citizens to begin formal educations. But allowing these least label or least inclined to profit from instruction to lead. Right? And here is, and then there are become the manual workers, there could be a profit from more instruction, would be continue to military training, and would be become a warrior and guardian of the state. A different level of education depends on individual difference. That's a Plato. What about Aristotle? Aristotle is different from Plato. Yeah, it's Plato is really emphasis on reasoning and thinking, right? But Aristotle is really focused on the experience. Yeah, it's really focused on the experience. So Aristotle agreed with the most other ancient Greeks that the state welfare depended on the educated citizen, and then the state should take an active role guiding education. So it's really the emphasize on the roles of the state, like public education nowadays, right? So he believed that little or nothing was in the mind other than what they get there through the sense. Nothing is in mind. Like Shun said, it's a tabula rasa. It's you don't have anything in your brain, and just by learning and experiencing, you add your knowledge one by one. It means that that's why they learn through the work. Really learn through the experience, right? And then, like, his career, knowledge is more practical than Plato's, based on the experience. Just think about it from the beginning. It's a Roman education is different from Greek education. Greek education is really abstract and ideal, even though some is really practical, like Aristotle. But Roman education is really kind of what did I say? I don't remember the word, and then really practical and really kind of simple and kind of delivering knowledge and skills like this. But Greek is kind of always remember the abstract and idea, but Roman education is really emphasized on the practical. Here is some philosophy's education, and then there is a theory that educational theories. If you study philosophy, and then there's a lot of perspective to understand the world. That's a philosophy, how you understand the world. And if you don't believe God, and your perspective and your perspective is different from totally different from mine. If you are Hindus, your perspective is totally different from mine, like this. There is a basic understanding of the universe, and what is the philosophy is there, general world philosophy is idealism. What is idealism? The ideas are the only true reality, the only things that worth knowing. That really focus on mind. Your ideas. But even though you cannot see, really, right? That's the idealism, and realism is a reality. This one is a little bit abstract. You cannot see reality, right? But in your mind, it's there. But the realism is a reality. It is independent of the human mind. Reality is out there. Something is out there. It's independent from human mind. So the world of physical object ultimate reality, like this. This is a remote control is a reality. This is even though there is your mind, but there is something is there. There is another perspective of another philosophy, perspective of understanding of the universe. What about the pragmatism? So maybe if you understand why they coming out, and then it's not a philosophy class. I'm not just give you brief understanding of how they understand. Pragmatism is a universe, is a dynamic, involving in purposes. The purpose of the thought is action, and truth is relative. That's a pragmatism. Okay, this is truth for you. It's not for me. Keep evolving. It's not stagnant, dynamic, and changing. So, like utilitarians, and then what's good for the people. So America, education is really based on the pragmatism. What is it? Existentialism. Reality is similar to the pragmatic, subjective. It's not an objective. And within the individuals, but subjective, but within the individuals, right? And individual rather than the external standard. If you understand the extensionalism in philosophy, you can understand. There is a basic idea of philosophies. There's another branch of the philosophies, but theories, and then philosopher is there, and teaching method is there, and then but what kind of educational philosophies? The perennialism is related to idealism. So really focus, teach ideas that are everlasting, seek enduring truths that are constant, not changing through great literature, art, philosophy, and reasons. What is the unchangeable truth? Perennialism. Maybe it really fits as a religious education. Whatever, essentialism. Essentialism is focused to teach the common core, like basic of information and skills needed for the citizenship. Right? It's really basic. That is essentialism. What about progressivism? Progressivism is really focused on the ideas should be tested by active experimentation. It's really, as empirical. And then learning rooted in the question of learners and interact with others. It's an experience and student-centered, little bit different way of the teaching and philosophy. And what about the constructionism, reconstructionism, and critical theory, and critical pedagogy, analysis of the world event and controversial issues and diversity to provide a vision to better world to change and social change. That's a critical theory. And construct, how can you construct an information from you got a different situation and then everything comes. Maybe we can learn about a little bit theories later, but there is a basic educational philosophies. And there's a key proponent, and then there's a how can they develop character development and teaching method and curricular emphasis, and then it's a little bit different. So think about it. What is that's a basic one. That's kind of it's really important things about nowadays, and we're gonna really emphasize science, right? Really emphasize science and empirical research. Mostly, really, and post modernism really goes their way, and then pragmatism and realism is like modernism, right? We try to test and over and over, it doesn't change much, and that's the truth. It's a scientific method. Like idealism is like before the modernism, right? What kind of philosophy do you have, like here? And it's not, we cannot say maybe which one is your basic window to understand the world. And there is maybe even though you have idealism, maybe you can have that exact this perennialism, but you can influenced by other stuff like me. Just all governments have their own philosophy. Based on the philosophy, there is aims and goals and objectives and curriculums and manages whole school, public schools. Private school is a little bit flexible in America. That is what I want to say that what kind of philosophy we have, and the philosophy and influence our educational philosophy, and then we try to teach and we learn from the way, and sometimes we are brainwashed by the philosophy of government. Depends on, right? Sometimes if you go to like communist countries, if you go to any animistic countries, and then they don't have much room to think individually, express in their own things. And it's against the communities, and it's against the society, and then there is a big consequences. So think about what is my educational philosophy. What is my philosophy and what is my educational philosophy? Maybe your education philosophy may be hybrid. You can make kind of elastic, or you can mix two, another one and two things and two theories, well, whatever. But think about your philosophies here, basic education philosophies here, and then how can we reflect your basic aims and what goals and objectives and relate now. I mean, there was a practice classroom, and there's a kind of delivered to the diverse learners. There is kind of how can you make effective? We are doing well or not, and then assessment, right? And what about what kind of method you gonna use it? All kind of things is related, right? So maybe next time, how can we write down the philosophy of education, even though it's not based, it's not like basic philosophies, general philosophy like realism, and no, just like a statement. What's the philosophy of your education? And then how can you put all things in your education, your philosophy? And not just a thing, thought, and how can you make it real and influence to the learners? Now that's about the lecture today, and I want to know. I don't think we don't have time to talk about the basic philosophy of education. No, how to write the philosophy. Maybe even though it's not aligned with the category, and then still that should reflect how you understand the universe, the world. If you are not Christian, if you are Christians, there's a big gap. Even though there is a common how to live together in this world, right? In society, as a citizen, but still there is big differences, right? So I want you to know, just think about what is the direction of your education. What is the direction of education? Just write down one sentence. Write down one sentence. And even if you are not a teacher, but think about, and if you are a teacher, if you are an educator in some place, if you don't, and just think about as a parent in the future, well, right now. If you are a teacher at school and school or the church, and then think about what is your philosophy of education. Maybe next time, before we start the class, and then probably share about how to write down the philosophy of education, and maybe next week or week after next week. Try to formulate by yourself, okay? Okay, you guys, and I'm so glad to learn about education together with you guys, and then I hope that you have some idea about your education and future education, and for yourself and your community.